Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour.
Welcome to the Progress Texas Happy Hour. I'm Advocacy Manager Reagan Stone. Today's conversation is part of a series we started with Democratic lawmakers in advance of the 2025 Texas legislative session. Of course, focusing on our elected officials, their legislative priorities, what's at stake for our state. State Representative Ron Reynolds is the first African-American elected to represent Fort Bend County in the Texas House since the Reconstruction era. You can tell me if that's right.
That is correct.
He serves as the chair of the Texas Legislative Black Caucus and the HBCU Legislative Caucus. He's also a proud and what I hear founding member of the Texas Legislative Progressive Caucus. Welcome to the show, Representative.
It's an honor to be on. I've been excited. I've been looking forward to being a guest on this show.
Yes, and I'm really happy to have you. I also want to introduce our second guest and a familiar face around the Capitol as well. Cyrus Reed is the Conservation Director at the Sierra Club Lone Star chapter. And prior to becoming that Conservation Director, he served as the Sierra Club's lobbyist on energy and air quality issues. I think he's still doing a lot of that right now, too. And he's a wealth of knowledge surrounding environmental issues. I think very much we're going to enjoy getting into the nitty gritty of a lot of those bills and different issues as well.
I appreciate it. I appreciate your organization. I appreciate you highlighting these issues. I like to say I'm a jack of all trade, master of none, but I do know a lot of, I know a little about a lot of things. So happy to share my perspective.
He's a modest guy. Let me say, Dr. Cyrus Reed. This is a wealth of information when it comes to energy, environmental issues. There's not many people in this state with his level of knowledge and advocacy. So I want to definitely appreciate him for everything that he does to educate members like me and fighting for clean air and for a healthy, safe environment.
Absolutely, and I know that means a lot in your district, and we're going to get right down into that here in just a moment. I want to just kind of jump into a few of our progressive priorities. And first off, Representative, reproductive rights. Of course, Republicans appear likely to expand their assault on Texas women and those that can become pregnant by further limiting access to abortion, targeting access to life-saving abortion drugs used in miscarriage. This includes even contraceptives and even, those crazy ideas like getting rid of no-fault divorce. Where do you see the fight ahead?
Well, I'm glad you brought that up as we're kind of leading off with that, because Texas has been one of the worst places for women's reproductive rights. As a father of two amazing, women, I am committed to continuing to fight for not just my daughters, but for all women in Texas to have access to have bodily autonomy to make bodily decisions for themselves with the consulting their own personal physicians. But the sad part about it is we've seen mostly Republican, older white men trying to legislate what women can do with their own bodies. Access to abortion is a part of healthcare, and they've done everything they can to decimate it, making it criminal. This 6-week abortion ban that should have been unconstitutional was started from Texas, and we're on the wrong side of this. I am 51 years old. The year that Roe versus Wade was passed was the year I was born in 1973. It was basically precedent. It was like, oh, this is enshrined. This is not going to be touched. When everyone went before the Supreme Court for confirmations, yes, we understand Roe versus Wade. And then the Supreme Court gutted it and it wasn't them. It got there because of these extreme MAGA Republicans in the legislature that put the bill into law. And I now see them want to expand it. You know what they really want? They want a national federal abortion ban. That is ultimately what they want. And that's why it's so important that people of good conscience will fight back to protect women's reproductive rights. Because in Texas, we lead the nation in Black maternal women in terms of maternal mortality. And that's been exacerbated since we passed that draconian legislation that puts bounties on people even escorting a woman to get an abortion, that is criminally went after physicians that dare to give an abortion. And the sad part about it, we don't even have exceptions for rape and incest. So yes, I think that it's a slippery slope that is trying to head to a national abortion ban, and it's important that we vote people like that out of office.
I couldn't have said that better, Representative. Here at Progress Texas, we're working to be able to make sure that our women have the options, but also the health care to be able to save their lives.
Absolutely.
Just, of course, mothers, I don't want to say too much, but literally bleeding out of hospitals.
Yes.
And we need to do something about this. And I know that you and the Progressive Caucus and the Democratic Caucus are leading this initiative.
We are. We're leading that initiative, but it's important that the listeners and viewers understand that the only way that we're going to be able to ultimately defeat them is if we get rid of them at the ballot box. We don't have the numbers in the House and the Senate to stop them. We're going to fight like hell to do everything we can to kill these bad pieces of legislation. But when they come up to the floor, these votes mostly go on a party line. And the Republicans are in the majority in the House, the Senate, and they have the governor. And I would add, just like at the federal level, they have the majority with the Supreme Court. That is why it's so important that we do everything we can to elect Democrats that care about women's reproductive rights and health care, making sure that health care is a basic human right, and that includes reproductive rights.
Amen. Thank you very much for those words. And that's encouraging as well, I think, for our audience as well. The second Jeopardy round issue that I want to get into here is what's sitting right behind you is don't mess with Texas public schools. And that's, of course, the public school voucher scam. What are we doing to be able to stop that?
Well, here's what we're doing. The Senate, under the leadership of MAGA Lieutenant Governor Dan Patrick, has already passed Senate Bill 2. And the reason why this bill is so awful is because it takes our tax money out of our public schools that have a duty to educate kids no matter what zip code they come from, right? And to give them an opportunity to learn so that they can compete in the global economy. Well, the way the voucher system works is our public tax dollars go to the wealthy families to be able to subsidize their kids that are already going to these private schools. So we're basically giving a tax subsidy to the wealthy on our taxpayers' dime. And here's the way it works. The private schools, they don't have to accept any student. They don't have to accept students with disabilities, students that may have come from economically disadvantaged homes that aren't reading on grade level, students that can't speak English, students that have had trouble with academics or behavior, children with ADHD and ADD. They don't have to take any of them, and they can legally say, no, I don't want them at our school. Or worst case yet, they can say, okay, I'm gonna take this student. They go to the school and then they kick them out, and then they go back to the neighborhood public school. The money's already staying at the private school. So our public schools in Texas rank 46 out of 50 states in funding per pupil. So we already have underfunded schools. This is going to exacerbate the have and the have-nots. And so the private schools, they can discriminate. It says they don't want to accept these black kids or these brown kids or these Asian kids or these women. They can accept all white male boys if they choose to. And as long as they don't say that's what they're doing, they can do it because they don't have the same requirements as public schools. So yes, this is awful that we're going to subsidize the wealthy with this voucher scam that is only going to satisfy the millionaires and billionaires. I've seen a theme with this from whether it's from the Trump administration all the way down to Governor Abbott and Lieutenant Governor Patrick, is that they're not doing what's in the best interest of Texans. They're only doing what's in the best interest of the wealthy, the well-off, and the well-to-do. And this is all at the expense of our neighborhood public schools. So this is a terrible piece of legislation. I hope that we can kill it in the House. And what can people do? They can call their state representative because it's already passed the Senate and we have to kill it in the House. It's going to be coming up for the Public Education Committee very soon. So people need to flood the members phones with calls and a call to action that says no to House Bill, I think it's whatever the House bill is, House Bill 3, I think, and say no to vouchers. We will support our public schools, but we will not support these voucher scams.
You kind of went into the direction that I think we're also going to be ending towards, which is getting a lot of the money out of politics, but also stop being able to support the most wealthy, the billionaires, the puppet masters.
That's right.
Rather the people.
The people. That's what we're here to do. When we raise our right hand, we take an oath to support the Constitution and the people of the state of Texas. But I have seen my colleagues time in and time out support and sell out to special interests, the millionaires and billionaires, the people that fund massive campaigns with dark money. These are the people that have prevented us from getting any common sense gun reform legislation. These are the people gutting our public schools to support the voucher scam. These are the people that are gutting women's reproductive rights. These are the people of why we don't have access to Medicaid expansion in Texas, where we lead the nation with the highest number of uninsured. And people need to stand up and vote them out of office. Elections matter. People have to rise up. Even though Texas is a voter suppression state that has made it harder to vote and easier to purchase a gun, it is incumbent for us to vote and vote out these people and vote in people that are putting people over politics, that are going to support the kitchen table issues, raising the minimum wage to a livable wage, clean air, criminal justice reform, access to health care, women's reproductive rights. These are all so fundamental, but we're focused on anti-LGBTQ, anti-immigrant issues. That's what we're focused on.
You hit it again, and there's a lot of rankings that Texans aren't proud of, and I would say not only public schools, dead last in health insurance.
Yes. Dead last.
Yeah, dead last.
Yeah.
So, and another one is surrounding environmental regulation. And that's why we got you here
Yes.
today, Cyrus. And so I want to kind of look at the landscape. And I thought in a few different ways we can, of course, literally look at the landscape of Texas, being, West Texas and the Permian, all the way to the Gulf Coast, where the representative, and I want to hear his thoughts there too, but also different agencies. Where do you want to start us off of some of the work that the Sierra Club's doing? And I know partnering with the representative as well.
Very much so. Let's start with our main environmental agency, the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality. And we have made some progress. We did a major sunset bill last session that is allowing for more public input, a little better regulation. But on the whole, we've seen through the years how the Texas Commission on Environmental Quality, who has fine staff that work there, but ultimately they're led by commissioners appointed by the governor. And we've seen time and time again how they tend to favor the polluters over the people. And so we're very concerned about that. And we've seen it in your district, Representative, but we've seen it in West Texas, where we have major problems with pollution, particularly in disadvantaged communities who have a cumulative impact. So in Fort Bend County or Houston or some areas in the Permian Basin, we're seeing it with pollution from items like hydrogen sulfide, and you have a bill to address that, where the TCQ hasn't changed the regulations on hydrogen sulfide in 50 years, and yet we have workers getting sick, workers dying, people getting sick. So we've got a bill to address that. That's just one example. Then we've got a major problem. We have a climate crisis, as you know, in our hands, where our climate's going kind of crazy. We got really hot days and polar vortexes, but we haven't caught up to that as a state in our regulations. We are the leading producer of oil and gas. That does generate some wealth, but it also generates pollution, particularly methane pollution, which is when gas is released into the atmosphere. It's a climate tucker. We're working with Representative Chris Turner on a bill to put some methane sensors all around the state. And then if we find problems with venting or flaring or leaking pipes, let's give industry 30 days to clean that up. So we're not hurting our people and hurting our climate.
I'm out literally where I live is in Alpine, Texas. So far west Texas by Big Bend National Park, some of our folks will know. And we literally had an earthquake, a 5.0, that issue, the fracking issue, the injection wells, the orphan wells.
The orphan wells are huge.
That's a big one.
You're on energy resources. That will be a big topic of discussion. And you talked about dark money. I won't call it dark money, but we know industry like Texoga, the Texas Oil and Gas Association, or the Permian Basin folks They represent their industry, and in general, they don't want further regulation. And so just a couple examples over in the Railroad Commission. They are right now in the Appropriations Committee. The Railroad Commission is asking for $100 million to plug orphan wells, and we support that.
Yes,
They need the
yes,
money
yes.
to do that. But why do they need that money? Why does it have to come from taxpayers? Well, Reagan, the last time we updated our bonding requirements was 1991. That's a long time ago. If you were born in 73.
That was the year I graduated high school.
That's when you graduated high school. Yeah.
Before that, I'm a 90s.
Okay.
Yeah, that is a long time.
The last time we updated our fines, the maximum fines that oil and gas folks can pay if they are found to violate the law, was 1983, which is the year I graduated high school.
Oh my goodness.
So we have a regulatory system that's in need of an upgrade.
That's right.
And we know that Railroad Commission will be under sunset, not this year, but 2 years from now. But in the meantime, we need some good attention to these issues because we're seeing right now we have about 8,000 orphan wells, but we've got 150,000 wells that are called inactive wells. In other words, industry hasn't plugged them yet. They're inactive, but at some point, either industry is going to plug them, or if they don't, if they evade the law, we, the taxpayers, are going to have to plug them. So we do need to deal with that issue. And then seismicity, as we frack more and more oil and gas, more and more produced water comes up. It's dirty. Research needs to be done that, some of it can be reused in the oil field. Some of it maybe we can use locally, but oil and gas really wants to discharge it into our waterways, and we need to be real careful about that because it's got fracking chemicals in it.
Yeah.
But that injection is problematic as well because it does cause that seismicity on West Texas.
Yeah, and so Representative, tell me a little bit about what some of these concerns, I know some are more specific to different regions, but Missouri City is over at East Texas where this oil and gas is typically sent to be refined and a lot of times sent, whether it's around the country or around the world. What's kind of the landscape over in your neck of the woods?
Well, I could tell you, we had a real example in my district, House District 27, in Missouri City, where we had a oil spill,
A blowout.
Yeah, we had and we know that going back to industry sadly writes the rules because, as Cyrus stated, that when it comes to TCEQ, the governor appoints the commissioners, right? And I've been on that committee now for 8 terms. This is my 8th term in the legislature. I've been on there every term in the legislature. He mentioned some things, climate. They don't believe in climate change because why do I know that? Because every time I filed a hearing to even have a study to look at the impact of climate change, can't even get a hearing for it. When we had Winter Storm Uri, I was on energy resources and environmental regulation. I even got one of the people to talk about, yes, climate change is real. We should look at that. We did nothing. They don't even want to talk about that. So they're climate deniers. They don't want to look at science. When it comes to the EPA, the Environmental Protection Agency under the Obama and Biden administration, they had very serious people that put in air quality standards. Texas fought it tooth and nail in litigation because they don't want these corporations that are polluting and harming the environment to have regulation. So they fought them at the federal level. TCEQ basically doesn't do enough. And so, yes, when we have oil spills, when we have abandoned and orphan wells, when we have environmental justice issues where these concrete batch plants are almost exclusively in Black and brown communities. I've seen the negative impact of health impacts. I've seen cancer clusters in these areas of poor and minority communities that have more environmental toxins and particles that are emitted from industry in those communities. And TCEQ pretty much gives permits ad nauseum to these corporations that are even close to schools, neighborhoods, and senior facilities. And so that is why I'm so passionate about it, because I've talked to constituents that have been negatively impacted with a neighborhood within a certain geography that had a exorbitant amount of people with cancer, and other health concerns that live close to to industry. And so we need to get serious about air quality and air monitoring so that we don't disadvantage our oil and gas industry, but we don't put their interests of profits before the health and safety of the citizens that live in those communities. And that is why it's so important to work with the Sierra Clubs and promote legislation that does this, because I have not seen any legislation that has come through the Environmental Regulation Committee that would put any kind of guardrails to protect on environmental justice issues, those specific issues. And every session, we have people coming in trying to regulate these concrete batch plants. Nothing.
There have been dozens of bills filed already by many representatives, particularly in the Houston
area.
But also in Dallas.
I know has done a lot of work around that, and wasn't getting. She was requesting TCEQ to hold public hearings, and Senator Alvarado's requests were being denied even there.
And again, I want to say some progress has happened last legislative session, and I'll give a shout out to Representative Bell and Chairman Schwartner in the Senate. We did pass a sunset bill for TCQ that did at least expand a little bit the public.
Just a teensy.
A little bit. Some of the public input around requirements, and they also required some sort of best management practices on aggregate and concrete batch plants. So a little bit of progress, but even that progress really only occurred not only because of those representatives, but because the people came to Austin.
Oh, absolutely.
We had busloads. I mean, I think Senator Miles had 2 busloads of people who came here just for the TCQ sunset hearing.
Right, that's right.
And I know you had some folks as well.
Because going back to your point, these people are the ones living it. They're seeing their loved ones have adverse health impacts. They're having increased asthma. People with good health that have moved to these neighborhoods saw a deterioration in their health. So this is not like people that are very sensitive and blowing smoke. These are real stories. I've had people cry to me about loved ones that health has diminished because of that, and they can't afford to move, right? They can't afford to move. This is their neighborhood. And some of them moved in the neighborhood, and then the batch plant came afterwards. So they didn't move in these neighborhoods knowing that they were going to have a concrete batch plant there. They moved into these neighborhoods because they were affordable, and some of them are second generation. That's where they live. That was their parents' home or grandparents. And so it's not fair to them that we're not protecting them with some minimal air quality standards. And we need more air monitoring.
Oh, definitely.
We need more enforcement and teeth to be able to revoke permits and increase fines, because until these bad polluters are held accountable, they put it in their business model.
Until there's a deterrence.
Until there's a deterrence, then they're going to keep doing it. And then they factor in as a cost of business.
It's a cost of business.
But then there's a human element side of it, that people are suffering and literally dying because we are giving more deference to industry than we are to these people. And those hearings brought that to life when you had people coming in and giving their own testimonies. And it was very powerful.
And we see the same issue on our electric grid side, where yes, there's been a lot of action by the legislature on the electric grid, and some of it we support, but they've ignored really the people, right? We last had new goals on energy efficiency for our utilities in 2011. We, the Sierra Club, and many other groups have tried for years to get more expanded energy savings program, help people weatherize their homes. And it's been even when we've been somewhat successful, basically either the governor vetoes it or maybe the Senate passes, the House doesn't take action. There are always powerful utilities that are preventing real action. So we're willing to give taxpayer funds to build new power plants. We don't seem to be giving taxpayer funds to help people weatherize their homes.
That's correct.
Or do backup power so we can help people in nursing homes,
that's right.
hospitals. We're hopeful this session we can actually get some money and action on those for those purposes. We saw what happened in Beryl with Centerpoint Energy. And again, Centerpoint Energy, good company, they do some good, but there's more that should be done.
Absolutely. And then we also don't see enough emphasis on green energy and renewables. We don't see enough emphasis on wind and solar. They kind of poo-poo on that because they want to keep producing profits for the oil and gas industry that is based on fossil fuels that emit greenhouse gases. So we want to see less emphasis on that and more clean energy. That is where the federal air quality standards were going under the Obama and Biden administration. There were significant investments to do that. I'm afraid that is all going to be changed, and it already changed course under the Trump administration. And Texas is more aligned with our leadership, with the Trump administration, of emphasis on, you've heard Trump say it, drill, baby,
which
drill.
Is silly. And the reason it's silly is because right now we are the leading state on wind and solar.
Yeah.
Or we might be second to California solar, but we're close.
Right.
I think we might be above them. So as long as the legislature doesn't do anything dumb, we can continue to grow those resources. But we are seeing bills that are specifically geared towards trying to stop renewable development, which, given our growth, is just silly.
It makes no sense.
Let's see. I have a resource that produces no emissions and doesn't use water. I think I should invest more in that resource, and it creates jobs.
Right.
So
thank you.
It's a little short-sighted to go, to try to make it more difficult for renewable energy, like several people in this legislature are doing, when we as a state are growing and we need more water, energy resources. We don't need to make it more.
That helps us to be more sustainable and not have another Winter Storm Uri. I remember, I never forget when they came out and falsely blamed wind and green energy on that, and it came out later that it wasn't.
It wasn't true.
It wasn't true. It was false. They want
all resources had trouble because it was a polar vortex.
Exactly.
And the biggest problem of all is we couldn't get the gas supply to the gas.
Exactly. Which had nothing to do with wind and solar. Right, it had nothing to do with green. It was like, that was the immediate response. And I have to say this, just like, unfortunately, when we saw, the plane collision with the helicopter over the Potomac, President Trump said it was DEI that was the blame. It turned out, of course, that's a big lie. But this is they try to support their narrative to make you think, DEI is bad or renewables are bad when there's a tragedy. When the facts don't merit that. And that is why it's so important that we have these conversations to educate people so they understand the facts and not this disinformation and misinformation that comes from the right to basically appease their base. And sadly, a lot of times it's low information voters that believe these false conspiracy theories about wind and solar that they failed us.
Yeah,
right?
And
our DEI means that you're meritless.
Sierra Club is a nonpartisan organization. Obviously, we've tended to support Democrats because they tended to support our issues, but we are a nonpartisan organization. I think it is incumbent upon us to reach all people, whatever their political, and at least give them the truth.
Absolutely.
So I think it's important that I'd be on a Progress Texas podcast, but I think it's also important that I'd be on some more conservative podcasts because there's a lot of misinformation out there. Unfortunately, and people respond to it. And some of it's promoted by, our president and his right-hand man.
Of course, Elon Musk. I'm going to call it out. I believe in transparency. I believe in giving people the truth and then they can make an informed decision. But when you give people lies and false information, they can't make an intelligent decision because they're basing it upon a false premise to begin with. If you convince me that, for example, DEI means you're less inferior people that are being hired, and who doesn't agree with merit-based? Mm-hmm. But the false notion is that these people weren't qualified to do a position because they happen to be a woman or African American or Hispanic. That is where you create false narratives that DEI means that less inferior, and that is what you hear from President Trump. The same thing you hear when you have Governor Abbott make comments about renewables. it is bad, and we have to clear that up and speak truth to power.
And I will say, to Governor Abbott's defense, he did start blaming renewables initially.
Yeah.
He did backtrack.
He had to.
Once the facts came
Yeah,
out.
yeah,
So
yeah.
again,
Right.
the important point is not these people are good, these people are bad. The important point is we as concerned residents of Texas, citizens of Texas, need to inform folks, and we need all of your listeners to be engaged.
That's right.
And speak truth to power.
That's correct.
And that's important, because if we don't,
Totally.
if we're silent,
Silence is complicity.
silence is complicity.
Yeah, right.
So,
Right.
yeah.
What's the best way for your constituents, folks from Missouri City and Fort Bend County, from your district? How can they engage with your office? How can they connect with you and your awesome?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Well, great. We encourage it. I mean, we encourage people to reach out to us. They can always call our district office at 281-208-3574. Our capital office at 512-463-0494. They can always follow us on Instagram and Facebook and X. We are accessible. They can email us. They can come visit. This is their capital office where we're in now. This is their office. They can come visit us. We were just with constituents today advocating for common sense gun reform legislation. So I encourage our citizens to be engaged and involved. But I can assure you that my staff and I are gonna continue to address their needs by promoting good public policy and fighting against all the bad bills that will harm them, and focusing on the kitchen table issues that they really care about.
So the only thing that defeats, organized money is organized power, and that is why Sierra Club, like a lot of organizations, we do have bi-weekly meetings that you can sign up for to focus on the legislature. We do have a legislative website where we track bills and let you know about resources we have. It's sierraclub.org/Texas. You'll find the legislative page. So I encourage people to get involved, whether it's with Sierra Club or Progress Texas or other organizations, gun reform, whatever issue you're passionate about, you should get involved, because we can't make a change, as you say, by being silent. The only way to make a change is by being engaged. And I'll tell you, Representative Reynolds is one of the best representatives here because he listens and he's willing to work with different organizations to file good legislation, knowing it's going to be hard to pass a lot of that legislation, but it's a process. There are budget amendments. There are amendments to other bills. And if you're not engaged, none of that can happen.
And if this is your first time here, a lot of times you got to throw bills 2 or 3 times before they get a hearing set.
That's right. That's right.
I know this isn't your first rodeo, but with that, you probably also have hope. You got courage. What's some words of encouragement for our audience?
Well, I'm reminded of words that Dr. King stated once before, that the moral arc of the universe is long, but it bends towards justice. So yes, it's not a sprint, it's a marathon. And I'm encouraged by when I see a broad coalition of people coming together, because we're stronger together, and fighting for good public policy and fighting against bad public policy. So I encourage everyone to don't be dismayed by the shock and awe that's coming from these executive orders from the Trump administration. They're terrible. They concern me too. But we have to fight. We have to be a part of the resistance. We have to, in John Lewis's words, be willing to make good trouble, necessary trouble, and being on the right side of history. I'll leave you with this. There are some people who say, well, if I was in a different era of the civil rights movement, this is what I would have did. This is our moment. This is our defining moment in history. Are we going to be a part of, the problem that's permeating right now with these MAGA extremists? Or are we going to be part of the solution and say, not on our watch will we go back? We're going to fight for women's reproductive rights, access to health care, climate and criminal justice reform, and economic issues to help working families and help poor and economically disadvantaged communities, and not just cater to the billionaires and millionaires and special interests that only seem to be benefiting from the policies that are coming from President Trump. So yes, get involved, get engaged. Don't just sit on the couch and complain about the problem. Get in the arena. Don't be an armchair quarterback. Get on the field. We need everyone as a team. Together, everyone achieves more.
Fantastic closing words. Thank you again, the Honorable Ron Reynolds for joining us today, and Dr. Cyrus Reed with the Sierra Club as well. And listeners, here at Progress Texas, you know us. We're in the business of countering the conservative disinformation machine. But while that machine is funded by oil billionaires, tech puppet masters, and the religious right-wing groups and more, we rely mostly on everyday Texans who value our hard work and share our beliefs that a Texas that works for everybody is a Texas we want to live in. We don't do subscriptions or paywalls because we believe the message of Progress is one that everyone should be able to access, learn from, and act upon. So if you become a regular listener, we could use your support, and no amount is too small. Thanks to the Honorable Christian Menifee and those who support us monthly, like contributors like Clayton Tucker with the Texas Progressive Caucus. You can join them too. Go to progresstexas.org/donate. And with that, from everyone at Progress Texas, thank you for listening and for all you do to press progress forward here in the Lone Star State. We'll see you next time.
The Progress Texas Happy Hour is a production of Progress Texas, a rapid response media organization promoting progressive messages and actions. Find us online at progresstexas.org and on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and YouTube. The podcast is produced by me, Chris Mosier, and our featured music is by Walker Lukens. Please be sure and subscribe to the Progress Texas Happy Hour on the podcast platform of your choice. Take a moment to leave us a review if you've enjoyed the show, and be sure and tell your friends about us. Thanks for listening and for all you do to press progress forward here in the Lone Star State. We'll see you again next week.